Hi, this is Lori Niles at Violinist.com, and we're here today with Gil Shaham, the amazing
So good to be with you.
Good to see you, Gil. How are you doing?
I'm good, Lori. It feels like I just saw you yesterday.
I know. It does. We did all those episodes of Gil Harmonic, and now we're back. But we're back with some really fun news. I'm actually really excited about this. On March 12th, there's a album coming out, and it's the Beethoven and the Brahms Violin Concerto, Gil Shaham featured soloist, and he recorded this with the Knights and Eric Jacobson, and I just can't wait. I have not heard it yet, actually. I just can't wait to hear this.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very exciting for me, too.
We were talking about this release and about why you put these two concertos together. And so, Gil, can you tell us a little bit about why pairing? You know, if you ask me, like, I couldn't tell you which was my favorite. They both might be my favorite concerto of all time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They're like the pinnacle, right? They're like the favorite violin concertos, that maybe the top of the genre, you know?
Yeah.
And, I guess, let's see, the story really starts with a very young Johannes Brahms, a 14-year-old Brahms, attending a concert in Hamburg performed by famed violinist Joseph Joachim, where the program is the Beethoven Violin Concerto.
But can you imagine such a historic event as that? Seeing Joachim perform the Beethoven.
Wouldn't it be amazing to have been there? Wouldn't it? It would have been amazing. And apparently this concert changed his life. We were very lucky for this album release. We had Styra Avins, who is a wonderful musicologist and a terrific Brahmsian. And she says, too, that concert had a great influence on Johannes Brahms. And there are letters where he discusses the Beethoven Violin Concerto with Joachim. And, I guess when I think of a great masterwork like the Brahms Violin Concerto, I think of, maybe an analogy would be like the genre in painting of like Madonna and Child. If you look at different Madonna and Childs from different masters in different generations, different centuries, you can see how one great master studied the older master and incorporated the older master's innovations and ideas, and somehow the genre evolves. And, I think that's absolutely true for something like the Brahms Violin Concerto. And,
you've got your violin. Okay.
Well, some people have noted that some passages in the Brahms Violin Concerto, maybe something like, maybe it's not unlike the Chacona of Bach, or maybe even something like, the brook maybe sounds somewhat similar to in the Brahms. And I guess people have also talked about Viotti. Maybe some of your readers know, and they can put something down in the comments. But I think more than any other piece, the Beethoven Violin Concerto is connected. It's related to the Brahms Violin Concerto. Oh, I was going to say they're like relatives. They are like, they're sisters born of the same muse, and they share the same DNA. And I don't just mean the notes D and A. And you were going to say
more dad jokes. Well, I was going to ask you. It seems like you've got some specific places where you feel that you sort of hear that influence, or
yeah, and we were discussing before that. I think it might be fun to put them side by side, and I'll try to see how many I can remember. And please prompt me when I leave out some.
Okay.
So even from the very first note the solo violin plays, many have commented that sound of violin and timpani, solo violin and timpani, is similar to the Beethoven.
I'll play this.
And also the whole idea of a linking cadenza between the orchestra exposition, violin exposition, that improvisation the violin begins with before actually beginning exposing the material is similar. And if you think of like those triplets in the Beethoven concerto, maybe these triplets in the Brahms are not so different. Possibly, there's a wonderful moment in the Beethoven violin concerto where the orchestra drops out and the violinist plays 4 notes, just 4 notes. Yes, and Brahms does a very similar thing at the end of that.
Well, it's pretty much the same thing. It just sounds like one is decorated and
Yeah, and in fact, I can easily imagine somebody, when you're practicing and maybe a little distracted, looking out the window, you could climb up those trills in the Beethoven, and then take a wrong turn and end up in the Brahms, and that's quite a striking part.
Have you ever done that?
Going up in a chromatic fourth.
Has that ever actually happened to you?
I don't think I've done it in concert, but I've done much worse. Another one is this. It's a very witty thing in the writing where Beethoven, the violin freezes on a trill, and then so he doesn't even change the main note of the trill, right? He changes the decorating note, and everything changes. The whole feeling changes along with it, and that happens in the Brahms too.
Yeah, it's a way to make it change on a dime almost. But doesn't that happens in some other things, doesn't it? Like in the Tchaikovsky concerto, I recall a trill.
Yes,
gets kind of different.
I think that's right, and I think in Tchaikovsky also, that happens after the Beethoven concerto, which he clearly knew well.
Right.
In Tchaikovsky's the reverse. And then he goes. So he lets the sun in, rather than darkening, something like that.
Right.
Even if you look at the Brahms, those kind of Nachschlags, it's not, maybe Bartók pays homage to him. Something like that. This one I think may be a bit of a stretch, but maybe maybe that's not so different sounding from
just kind of using that octave for emphasis, kind of.
Yeah, that sort of leap to the high note and then descending. So I don't know. Something like that. One that to me is clear and very structural is, there's a big buildup in the Beethoven concerto at the end of a violin solo where, he's aiming for D major. And then the orchestra, surprisingly, goes beyond D major. They actually it's like they skip a step, they go to B flat, it's like a deceptive cadence. And we have the
surprise chord at the end there.
Surprise chord. And
Yeah.
we have a similar thing in the Brahms, actually in the same spot. It's a very kind of structural moment. It builds up. And then, say the orchestra surprises and goes up to B flat.
Yeah.
And even more than that, the feeling of the pieces, I think, is very similar. And maybe, when I think of like the ending coming out of the cadenza in the Beethoven, there's this very tear-soaked moment, where the violin sings the melody for the last time, something like that. And then,
what a treat to just hear you play, Gil.
Oh, thank you, Lori. Brahms does the same thing. Coming out of the cadenza, he gives the melody to the solo violin to sing for the last time, like a farewell. And similarly, in the Beethoven, the note values start getting faster, and we start, sort of accelerating back to the allegro feeling. Same with the Brahms, something like that.
It's both are very triumphant in the end, despite that sort of sad farewell kind of thing.
The ending of the first movement. If you think of the coda of the last movement, there's that race to the finish. Beethoven has the sort of rhythmic values getting shorter and shorter, and we end up with these syncopations in 6/8. The orchestra alternates with violin, and it's the same thing. The same thing in the Brahms Violin Concerto, that you have those syncopations and orchestra alternating with violin. Something like that.
Well, so what do you think? I mean, do you think Brahms was sort of paying homage to Beethoven, or was he copying him? I mean, that's not, that's not really what was happening.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think, these kind of things you can find everywhere. I think the Beethoven Violin Concerto was an important piece for Brahms, and he clearly knew it. And he clearly studied it, and he was, how should we say, he was fluent in the language of the Beethoven Violin Concerto. Right. And when I talk to composers, they will speak of their own music. They'll say, yes, some of these things were intentional, but some of these maybe similarities to other works are completely subconscious. Maybe in that Brahms symphony, there's. I'm maybe misremembering here. I may be misremembering, but people say maybe that's an homage to a Beethoven symphony. And maybe likewise with his violin concerto, maybe there are passages in which Brahms pays homage to the older master whose music changed his life when he was 14 years old.
And then it's just an evolution of the language that's continued, you know.
That's this amazing, cross-generational part of our art. It's, yeah. And these really, as you say, these are two pinnacles of the genre. And I was so lucky to work with Eric and with the Knights, and we had an amazing team working on the recording, and it was an incredible honor to have Styra Avens on board with us.
Well, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear it, and we will try to do some kind of CD giveaway or album giveaway on Violinist.com. And thank you for that tour through kind of both concertos. It's really fun to see those parallels, and we can start sort of.
I hope it was fun, kind of putting them side by side.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have a big party when this thing comes out, and congratulations on getting this out into the world.
Thank you, Lori. I hope we can see each other in person soon.
Yes, and I hope to see you play in person soon. I hope we can all see you play in person soon.
Oh, thank you. Everybody stay safe and keep washing hands.
Yeah. Bye-bye.